that her own judgment is superior to that of either the common hangman or the gods, and that her own enterprise is more favorable to her opportunities. And men would oppose it because it would restrict their liberty. Their liberty, of course, is largely imaginary. In its common manifestation, it is no more at bottom than the privilege of being bamboozled and made a mock of by the first woman who ventures to essay the business. But nonetheless, it is quite as precious to men as any other of the ghosts that their vanity conjures up for their enchantment. They cherish the notion that unconditioned volition enters into the matter, and that under volition there is not only a high degree of sagacity, but also a touch of the daring and the devilish. A man is often almost as much pleased and flattered by his own marriage as he would be by the achievement of what is currently called a seduction. In the one case, as in the other, his emotion is one of triumph. The substitution of pure chance would take away that soothing unction. The present system, to be sure, also involves chance. Every man realizes it, and even the most bombastic bachelor has moments in which he humbly whispers, "There, but for the grace of God, go I." But that chance has a sugar coating. It is swathed in egoistic illusion. It shows less stark and intolerable chanciness, so to speak, than the bald hazard of the die. Thus men prefer it and shrink from the other. In the same way, I have no doubt, the majority of foxes would object to choosing lots to determine the victim of a projected fox hunt. They prefer to take their chances with the dogs. 23. Extra-legal devices. It is, of course, a rhetorical exaggeration to say that all first-class men escape marriage, and even more of an exaggeration to say that their high qualities go wholly untransmitted to posterity. On the one hand, it must be obvious that an appreciable number of them, perhaps by reason of their very detachment and preoccupation, are intrigued into the holy estate, and that not a few of them enter it deliberately, convinced that it is the safest form of liaison possible under Christianity. And on the other hand, one must not forget the biological fact that it is quite feasible to achieve offspring without the imprimatur of church and state. The thing indeed is so commonplace that I need not risk a scandal by uncovering it in detail. What I allude to, I need not add, is not that form of irregularity which curses innocent children with the stigma of illegitimacy, but that more refined and thoughtful form which safeguards their social dignity while protecting them against inheritance from their legal fathers. English philosophy, as I have shown, suffers by the fact that Herbert Spencer was too busy to permit himself any such romantic altruism, just as American literature gains enormously by the fact that Walt Whitman adventured, leaving 7 sons behind him, 3 of whom are now well-known American poets and in the forefront of the new poetry movement. The extent of this correction of a salient evil of monogamy is very considerable. Its operations explain the private disrepute of perhaps a majority of first-rate men. Its advantages have been set forth in George Moore's Euphorion in Texas, though in a clumsy and sentimental way. What is behind it is the profound race sense of women, the instinct which makes them regard the unborn in their every act, perhaps, too, the fact that the interests of the unborn are here identical, as in other situations, with their own egoistic aspirations. As the popular philosophy has shrewdly observed, the objections to polygamy do not come from women, for the average woman is sensible enough to prefer half or a quarter or even a tenth of a first-rate man to the whole devotion of a third-rate man. Considerations of much the same sort also justify polyandry, if not morally, then at least biologically. The average woman, as I have shown, must inevitably view her actual husband with a certain disdain. He is anything but her ideal. In consequence, she cannot help feeling that her children are cruelly handicapped by the fact that he is their father, nor can she help feeling guilty about it, for she knows that he is their father only by reason of her own initiative in the proceedings anterior to her marriage. If, now, an opportunity presents itself to remove that handicap from at least some of them, and at the same time to realize her ideal and satisfy her vanity, if such a chance offers, it is no wonder that she occasionally embraces it. Here we have an explanation of many lamentable and otherwise inexplicable violations of domestic integrity, The woman in the case is commonly dismissed as vicious, but that is no more than a new example of the common human tendency to attach the concept of viciousness to whatever is natural and intelligent, and above the comprehension of politicians, theologians, and greengrocers. 24. Intermezzo on monogamy. The prevalence of monogamy in Christendom is commonly ascribed to ethical motives. This is quite as absurd as ascribing wars to ethical motives, which, of course, is frequently done. The simple truth is that ethical motives are no more than deductions from experience, and that they are quickly abandoned whenever experience turns against them. In the present case, experience is still overwhelming on the side of monogamy. Civilized men are in favor of it because they find that it works. And why does it work? Because it is the most effective of all available antidotes to the alarms and terrors of passion. Monogamy, in brief, kills passion. And passion is the most dangerous of all the surviving enemies to what we call civilization, which is based upon order, decorum, restraint, formality, industry, regimentation. The civilized man, the ideal civilized man, is simply one who never sacrifices the common security to his private passions. He reaches perfection when he even ceases to love passionately, when he reduces the most profound of all of his instinctive experiences from the level of an ecstasy to the level of a mere device for replenishing the armies and workshops of the world, keeping clothes in repair, reducing the infant death rate, providing enough tenants for every landlord, and making it possible for the palsy eye to know where every citizen is at every hour of the day or night. Monogamy accomplishes this not by producing satiety, but by destroying appetite. It makes passion formal and uninspiring, and so gradually kills it. The advocates of monogamy, deceived by its moral overtones, fail to get all the advantage out of it that is in it. Consider, for example, the important moral business of safeguarding the virtue of the unmarried, that is, of the still passionate. The present plan in dealing, say, with a young man of 20, is to surround him with scarecrows and prohibitions, to try and convince him logically that passion is dangerous. This is both supererogation and imbecility. Supererogation because he already knows that it is dangerous, and imbecility because it is quite impossible to kill a passion by arguing against it. The way to kill it is to give it rein under unfavorable and dispiriting conditions, to bring it down by slow stages to the state of an absurdity and an horror. How much more, then, could be accomplished if the wild young man were forbidden polygamy before marriage, but permitted monogamy? The prohibition in this case would be relatively easy to enforce, instead of impossible as in the other. Curiosity would be satisfied, nature would get out of her cage, even romance would get an inning. 99 young men out of 100 would submit, if only because it would be much easier to submit than to resist. And the result? Obviously, it would be laudable, that is, accepting current definitions of the laudable. The product after 6 months would be a well-regimented and disillusioned young man, as devoid of disquieting and demoralizing passion as an ancient of 80. In brief, the ideal citizen of Christendom. The present plan surely fails to produce the satisfactory crop of such ideal citizens. On the one hand, its impossible prohibitions cause a multitude of lamentable revolts, often ending in a silly sort of running amuck. On the other hand, they fill the YMCA's with scared poltroons full of indescribably disgusting Freudian suppressions. Neither group supplies many ideal citizens. Neither promotes the sort of public morality that it is aimed at. 25. Late marriages. The marriage of a first-rate man, when it takes place at all, commonly takes place relatively late. He may succumb in the end, but he is almost always able to postpone the disaster a good deal longer than the average poor clodpate or normal man. If he actually marries early, it is nearly always proof that some intolerable external pressure has been applied to him, as in Shakespeare's case, or that his mental sensitiveness approaches downright insanity, as in Shelley's. This fact, curiously enough, has escaped the observation of an otherwise extremely astute observer, namely Havelock Ellis.